My name is Kyle Groves. I am a technical specialist with ATG. I'm also an EIT. I've been with ATG for about a year and a half now, coming on my 2-year mark. And before that, I've got another 3 years worth of design experience in solid waste, as well as residential and commercial site design. And today we're going to be talking about drawing object layers inside Civil 3D templates. And as part of this whole thing, we're going to be understanding the connection between layers, styles, and Civil 3D objects. So a lot of the details of today are going to be focused more toward a CAD manager on how to solve those problems. But if you're a user and you've always wanted to know, why do things look the way that they look, we're going to get into that today. And so wanted to give that quick preface. So anyone who's not super heavy in the back end of Civil 3D, there's going to be a lot of new information, but hopefully we'll all be able to catch up and keep up. So with that, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? Well, really, it's the fact that you or your users are tired of hunting around to figure out why a certain Civil 3D object isn't displaying correctly. You try and freeze it, you try and thaw it, and it's still there, and it's not doing what you want. At the end of your project, you may notice that you've got a really long list of layers that has something to do with the name of an object that got created at some point in time. And as far as the styling and things are concerned, you might have a ton of styles in your template, and you might be wondering yourself whether or not they all have to be there. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is solving that by reviewing the approach that your template is taking to using Civil 3D styles and the drawing object layer settings. These control how new Civil 3D objects get assigned to layers, or whether or not a new layer is created when a new object is created. We're also going to look into using layer 0 inside of our styles, and this is going to give us the ability to reduce how many styles we need. And how we're going to execute that today is by creating a pre-populated pipe network inside our template. So as my outline suggests, we're going to first go back and cover our bases on how templates work inside the Civil 3D world with a special focus on Civil 3D styles and object layers. And then after that, we'll get into the software and we'll take you through that workflow. So template basics. Remember, Civil 3D is not just Civil 3D. It's built on top of AutoCAD. So we've got all kinds of things that AutoCAD is going to be controlling. These are our units. These are our blocks, drawing scales, line types, a lot of things that can be found inside the Design Center, as well as layers, which are also found inside Design Center. As far as Civil 3D is concerned, though, since this is built on top of that, new functionality was added. The style is the ultimate control of how things look inside Civil 3D. And then we've also got a new area so that we can specify drawing settings. Most relevant to a Civil 3D template are the object layers, as well as the units and zone. That's where we can predefine our coordinate system. But today, we're only going to be focusing on how layers and styles interact with each other. And again, that Civil 3D opportunity to define that as our object layers. So Civil 3D styles, they're super important. And that's because we've all run into this situation, right? I select my object inside my model space. I go over and I check the properties palette. And I'm wondering, does this Civil 3D object really live on the layer that my properties palette is telling me? Or does it live somewhere else? And the answer is that it very likely lives somewhere else. And you're not going to know where that somewhere else is unless you go in to view that surface style and you check the display tab. Inside the display tab is where all of that true layer assignment and that true visual control is going to occur. So first of all, if that light bulb is on, it means it's possible to see it inside the drawing. But if that light bulb is off, there's no way you're going to be able to turn it on. You can thaw and turn on every layer in your drawing. It's not going to show up unless the style lets it show up. But then we have more layer assignment options. So if I back up a few steps here, we could see that that tin surface was living on C-tin. But my surface is made up of all of this other pieces of data. I've got points, triangles, major contours, minor contours, all of my analysis things. And those each, in this particular style, have their own layer settings. So I've got a layer just for proposed major contours and just for proposed minor contours. So this is where all of that really hits the road as far as the rubber is concerned. And this tells us that the layer display for a particular type of data on an object can be different than the whole object, if we want to think of it that way. There's also an opportunity here to specify for layer 0. Now, hopefully, we've all been told and repeated to the rest of our organization, don't draw on layer 0. Anything that you'd be drafting, you shouldn't be drafting on layer 0. You also, in today's day and age, should put nothing, absolutely nothing on the layer def points. We now have the ability to take a layer and turn it on to no plot. So we don't want to draw anything on def points, but why aren't we drawing on layer 0? Well, layer 0 isn't really a space for model objects because it's a place for rules. In fact, it's a placeholder for our rules. And it says, hey, in this instance here on my screen where I say the slopes of my surface, if they were turned on, they were going to be going to layer 0. What layer 0 really means is, just put a pin in that rule. See if there's something else in my chain of telling objects what to do, where to be, and what to look like. Look for some other rule. And if you find it, then go ahead and apply that. If layer 0 is assigned and it goes up and up and up and finds no other rule telling it where to go, then yeah, it will actually end up on layer 0. And that's suggesting that you should go back into your template and find a rule to apply to that particular object. And so when we also say layer 0, that means live on the layer that the object lives on. So in this case, all of my elevations and slopes and anything else here that says layer 0 is going to be controlled by the layer C-10. So that's the foundation of how styles work. And now it's time to talk about the Civil 3D object layers and how those contribute to the rest of our template. So again, we're going to go into our drawing settings and we're going to go check out that layer tab. And the screenshot that I've got up right now is kind of the end game of where we're going to go today. So I'm telling you where we're going to end up. But basically, what it says is for parcel tables. Anytime I create a parcel table, it's going to go on the layer C prop table. And because I've got this modifier column and this value column set to none and unpopulated, doesn't matter where that data came from for that parcel, it's always going to end up on that layer C table prop. But we can have new layers get created when we create a new Civil 3D object. And we can assign either the object name as a prefix or a suffix. That's what this modifier column does. And then for that value, you can hard code stuff in here, and there's always the argument of, do I use a string, manual text, a quotation mark, a dash, a colon, or do I use a field? Do I use some dynamic reference to other data inside my drawing? And when we use the asterisk here inside that value column, that is a field component calling back to the object's name. Now you can put additional string values in here. So for example, I have dash anno in my layer name. I could have the dash asterisk or asterisk dash. That all works. So those play nicely together. But I have to have the asterisk if I want to have that object name in my new Civil 3D layer, or sorry, AutoCAD layer. And then that prefix suffix is added to the base layer. So how this is going to work is I'm going to create a pipe network, call it C something storm something. And then that is going to then create a layer every time I create a pipe, or when I create that very first pipe. In this case, I'm going to have a layer called C Muni pipe, or C Muni storm, and that's going to be the beginning of the layer C Muni storm pipe. So that'll make more sense when we get inside the drawing, but this is what we're going for today, and this is actually what we'll be creating. So now that we've covered all that groundwork, and thank you for staying with me on it, let's hop into the software and let's talk about how these pre-populated pipe networks can illustrate all of these concepts that we're talking about and maybe make your life easier and the life of your user a little bit easier. So our first job, we go into the template itself. we need to add what I'm referring to in this workflow as a base layer, that -ano -pipe. And then we need to create an empty pipe network. We're going to save the template, and then we're going to create a new drawing from that template. Inside this new drawing is where we're actually going to create those pipe network objects, and we're going to create those AutoCAD layers as a result. Once we're done with that, we've gone ahead, we've made sure that our styles look good and everything's working the way we want it to. Then we go back in and we migrate all that data back into the template. And the reason why we do that is because we want our templates to be pristine and perfect to the best of their ability. Except templates remember everything. So if I delete, even if I create a polyline and delete that polyline and do that 100 more times, as soon as I go to create a new DWG based off of that template, my brand new DWG understands that I've created and deleted 100 different polyline objects. And the longer that history becomes, the more likely it is that we may run into some sort of a corruption issue. Now, we're talking very small numbers. Something like 0.1% for every time that happens. And that's just totally arbitrary, but a really, really big number times a really, really small number is a number that we can't ignore. So I always advocate do as little as possible inside your primary template. Always create that new drawing, do your testing in there, and then bring back the data that you like and put it back in your template. So also this is being recorded. I'm about to click through here and show some extra steps. Live viewers, don't worry about it. Recorded viewers, feel free to take a pause and look at the more detailed steps. But with that, let's go ahead and get into the software. All right, so here we are, and I am inside my design template. This is the CTC template that we've been using for a good long while, and CTC software is now maintaining and using as part of their demo data sets. But inside here, I can see, oh, I forgot to actually delete those previously. So my template will remember that I've created and deleted those twice, so not so fantastic on my part, but let's go on anyway. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to go into my settings. Go ahead and close out of this real quick. We'll come back to that later. But I need to go into my drawing settings and I need to look at my my object layer settings. Now, I typically go into my tool space settings tab to find this info. You can also find it in the application icon under drawing utilities, drawing settings. Had to take me a minute there. I don't always remember that one. But inside here, units and zone, this is where we set our coordinate systems. There's lots of back and forth on why that is or isn't a good idea. But then we've got our object layers. And we can see here that this template is currently using a few things to create objects and their layers. So for example, all of my alignments are going on the layer C-road. All of the annotation for that is going on C-road-text. And if you start your template from the out-of-the-box AutoCAD Imperial, AutoCAD Metric, and CS template, there's going to be a lot of this information filled out. But if you're ever wondering, did I start this template from acad.dwt, the base AutoCAD template? You'll be able to figure that out because you'll notice that all of this layer assignment is set to 0 because the AutoCAD template doesn't know what a civil 3D object is and can't push that information forward. So what I'm interested in here is my pipe network stuff. So I need my pipes, I need my structures, and I need their annotations, and I need the things that are going to go in my profile and my section views. So if I go find my structure, I can see that I've already got a layer called CStorm structure, but I don't have that actual base layer created yet. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go over to my layer property manager, talent, and I'm going to go, and I can just really pick any layer here that has the plotting settings that I'm looking for. In my case, I'm not too concerned about plot styles or whatever else. So I'm just going to find 0. And when I'm in the layer manager, if I click on a layer under the name column and press the Enter key, it's automatically going to create a copy of that layer with all of its settings and then allow me to kind of rename it. So I want this to be called dash ano. I want another for dash pipe. I want dash struct. I want dash prof. Now, if you wanted to put your profile and your sections into two different layers, you could, and you could have a dash section NCS layer tag here. But to keep things simple, which is kind of the whole point of this, is I'm going to recommend that all of your projected objects go on that profile layer. And now that I've got these set up, I can reference them inside my drawing object settings. So I go to edit my drawing settings, back into the object layers, and now I got to find the ones that I'm interested in, which are the pipe itself. This one's going to go on the dash pipe layer. All of my labels are going to go in the annotation layer. I'm going to skip the table. It's not the worst thing to just kind of put that all in the same layer because you might have multiple different networks that you're trying to do, or what have we. For the pipe network section, that's again going to be a profile, as is the pipe structure profile. And then I've got structures and structure labels, which are going to be structure and annotation, respectively. Now that those are set up, I can sort by the layer, and that'll bring these all up. And I need ano, pipe, profile, structure. Okay, so I'm good. I'm ready to go as far as this layer column is concerned. But what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to create a network that already has the naming that I'm looking for. So for my stormwater stuff, I want that name of my pipe network to inform the ultimate name of my layer. And to do that, I'm going to modify this base layer of dash structure with a prefix. And by using an asterisk right here, I'm saying use the name of my pipe network. If I was going to be applying this to any of these other objects, at the end, I'll give you a breakdown of my opinion on which one of these should have object naming applied to them. But for example, we can do this with our grading objects. We can do this with our feature lines. We can do this with alignments, profiles, corridors, sections. Anything in here we can apply that to. But for example, like our subassemblies, we're going to have a lot of those in our drawing. We don't necessarily need a unique layer for every subassembly that comes in. But for now here, we're set up with these 4 different base layers, the prefix modifier using the object name. Now, this checkbox down here, immediate and independent layer control, I'm not really going to go into that, but I will suggest that you go into the help from this dialog. It'll take you right to there. And toward the bottom, it will give you the lowdown on this. Basically, it's whether or not if you turn off like an alignment, there's curves, there's lines, there's warning symbols, all that stuff. Do you want all of the components to be turned off, or do you still want those individual layer assignments to control? That is a personal decision for you and your firm. Some of the companies that I work with have that turned on. Some of them have it turned off. For today, I'm going to leave that turned off. And at this point, I need to now create my pipe networks, but they're going to be empty. And they're going to be empty because I don't want to add a ton of data to the history of this drawing and every drawing that's based off of it. I'll go into my prospector, and from here, I'll just right-click on networks and go to create by layout. We can, of course, come up to our home tab and pipe network create. So C Muni Sturm. So I'm using the NCS 4-character designations with this one. So Muni for municipal, Storm for, well, storm. I'm going to be using part list. Now I've got these modified. I've got some other stuff baked in for some aha moments, but this is also the point in time in your template. You go through, you make sure you have all your parts in here, all your sizes. You've got your styles set up, any pay items, render materials, rules, all that stuff. Do this in your template to the best of your ability before you go in and build it out for your testing. But I've got one for C Muni Storm, and I'm going to need another for C Muni Sanitary. And I'm going to use the SSWR tag for that. and I'll give it that sanitary parts list. Now, there's also nothing saying in here that you can't have one for your existing stuff set up, in which case, under this convention, I would say v-muni, storm and sanitary, so on and so forth. But to keep things cleaner today, I'll just keep it at the proposed. And at this point, I'm ready to begin testing. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to do that in my template. So from here, I'm just going to give this a save, and I'm going to create a new drawing. Based off of that, and here's where I'm going to go through and create my objects and make sure that everything is done. Now, since this came from that old drawing, notice that I have my pipe structure and profile stuff, but I do not have anything created yet. So these drawing object settings, not only do they say, hey, make sure when I create this object, it goes on the right layer, it says only create these when that object itself is created. So until I create a storm pipe or a gravity pipe or a gravity structure, I'm not actually going to get that layer created. Same thing goes with my annotation, alignments, alignment labeling, profiles, profile views, all that stuff. These layers aren't going to get created until the objects are. But when the objects are created, we're going to be thoughtful and predictable about how those layers are going to be populating in my template. So now that I'm in this drawing, I don't want to create a new pipe network, because if I did, then I'm going to lose the rest of my layering stuff that I'm trying to be specific about. So I'll go into the storm, and I'm going to edit this pre-populated network. And I mean that I'm going to do that in my new drawing. And in here, doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm going to create a structure and some pipe. Confirm my storm sewer. Go ahead and drop it in. And I'll just do 100 feet long over here. Oh, actually, hold on. Back up for a second. With these base layers, we do have an opportunity to kind of go ahead and get this set up ahead of time. So for example, I don't want, what I don't want is I don't want everything to be white. I don't want it all to be a continuous line type, so forth, so on and so forth. So right away, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say, all right, blue, that shows up terribly on my black background. So I'm going to make all of my storm stuff a green color. How about 80? Well, my annotation, white is what I'm going to end up with, but for now I'll just make it yellow so that it pops and I know that everything's working. And then for my pipe, I want that to have its own special line type, which I went ahead and created with just some carrots. Although I have an opinion on directional line types and pipe networks, and it is negative, want to make things easy for everybody to see today. So now that I've got those set up, when I create my new objects, those pipes, those structures, those labels, they're going to take on those properties of my base layers. So 100 feet east-west, and then change up just for some variety here, get some other structures, other pipes, and make sure that all the styles are set up correctly in my part list, so on and so forth. And I can see, this is not quite what I wanted. I told everything that it was supposed to be green, right? And I wanted that carroted line type being assigned to that first pipe. Yet this first pipe is showing up as blue. Well, what's going on here? Let's make sure that we've got our layer created. So I'll type in strm. And this old stuff, I didn't clean that out of my template first. That's all right. I had a variety of settings. I'll get to those later, but I can see that my pipe and my structures were created with their green 80 color, yet some of these are showing up as blue and others of them are showing up as green. Does anybody know why this is happening? Feel free to type into the chat window. It has to do with that other thing. We're not just here to talk about layers, we're here to talk about our styles too. So Joel Miller, thank you very much for typing in with that. Our object layer, or our style rather, our style is calling out some sort of specific layer. So when I go in, we'll check the good ones first. I'll check it on the structure style and just go there through the right click. And I can see that my display control for all of these is set to layer 0. And when my display control says go to layer 0, what it's really doing is it's a placeholder for look for some other rule. So since this is a Civil 3D object, and that Civil 3D object got created on a specific layer, that means that my structure lives on a specific layer. So if I come in here now and I freeze that structure layer, it's turning off, and I'm getting that visual control that I was looking for this whole time. But it's also getting that display control that's very streamlined and catching up with that. And if I go and check on my pipe style, I can see that I've got this technically set up as a double wall with a center line. So the center line, that's what's going to plot. And as I was mentioning before, that's set on layer 0. But was working together with SEH, and they really wanted to see those outside walls in model space. So this was their idea to put their outside pipe walls. They're hard coding that in to a no plot layer. So this is an opportunity where it's okay to hard code stuff because we're going to specify those layer settings and take care of as much as we can from the layer manager. So what do I need to do here? Well, let's go ahead and just get the annotation set up. I'm going to get a network in, or a alignment in here, because I have to get all of the rest of those objects created. So we can get that from the contextual ribbon, structure 1, structure 2. Don't really need labels because that's not what we're focusing on today, and we'll go straight into the profile view. Okay, sweet. Change that style. I don't need that buffer today. Whatever. Come up into the profile view. We're going to project our objects to the view. Part of the reason why I created the network, or the alignment rather, not the whole width of the network, so that I don't have to worry about, not project, draw in. But when my alignment is only so long and my parts are easy to click elsewise, then I don't have to worry about like selection cycling or anything like that. So grab that network, put it in this view, and I can now see my pipe is showing up. And in my layer properties manager, poof, now that I created that profile view and I projected to it, I've got that profile layer for my storm network. And the last thing I need to do is get some annotation in here. When I create my annotation, yes, it's possible to go into your settings and go adjust your pipe network settings and choose a default label style for these different types of labels that we're going to create. But I'm very much about being thoughtful and methodical for how you create and modify your objects inside Civil 3D. So I've discovered that under the contextual ribbon, when you go to add a label, you can always just take that first one, add whatever labels. It's going to give you this dialog box. If you want to get there from the annotate, go to add your labels, go to your object that you're interested in, and again, it's that first option. That gives you an opportunity to be real specific, especially with these pipe networks. You can do the entire network or just one part, and you got to choose whether it's plan or profile or section. I'm just going to do single part plan. And I'll add one for my structure, and I'll add one for my pipe. And again, I'm noticing some of these are yellow and some of these are white. If I was accomplishing my goal correctly of creating objects that are getting their display control based off their AutoCAD layer, means whatever set up in this label style, the profile length description style, isn't working correctly. So I'll go find my pipe, label style, plan profile, this one. And for our label styles, we're generally going to see this. There's a couple of places we can go. We want to go to the General tab. And in this case, I want this not set to CStorm text. I want this set to layer 0. And then also make sure in your Layout tab that all of your components are using by layer color definition. So once I do that, you can see I already did, but regen for kicks and giggles. Now I'm yellow. When I click on this, it's on my C Uni Storm Anna. So that's pretty great. We can go back through and we can verify now for this structure style. This is my storm sewer manhole. And if I go and I look at my structure label styles, I can see that I've got a label style for name only, and I've got a for sanitary, and I've got a style with name only for storm. Now, with all of this set up, do I really need 2 label styles? Or do I just need a label style that's going to recognize what pipe network it's associated with? The latter is true. So I can actually delete one of these. And we'll come back to this once we get our sanitary network put together. But now that I've got all of this referencing the actual pipe network, I don't need so many label styles, because they're going to come in the way that I want them to, which is based off their layer. And we'll change that structure label to name only. We'll see that this is yellow. I'll give a different color to my pipe in, to my sanitary network. And let's take this structure style and set it to layer assignment 0. Don't forget, we have multiple view directions that we can look at inside these display tabs. So we also need to make sure that our profile layer setups are going to layer 0 as well, and even our section on these structure styles. If set up correctly, which we can see our plan view just hit back to green, and now our profile views hit to green. So this is what layer 0 can do for you inside your style assignment. But you can't just go in and tell everything to go on layer 0. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of, you might have some trouble with too many things being controlled by the layer. So it's this balancing act that we're always trying to achieve inside Civil 3D between styles and layers. And I'm here today not to tell you that this is the only way to do it, not to tell you that this is the best way to do it, but just give you some more information on how it can be done. So I'm going to do the same thing here with my, not going to do that quite yet because I need to go back. And now that it's time to create my sanitary stuff, these base layers are going to inform how that's going to work. So my current sanitary is set to color 200. That's fine. I'll use a slightly different shade of pink for my base layers. I'll do a cyan annotation. We'll get nice and bright with color 200. I'm going to change my line type for my pipe from storm to sanitary. Go over to my sanitary network, edit it. We're ortho 100, not ortho, somewhere else. And I can see here that I'm using the exact same pipe style. I've only gone the pipe center line. But when I'm using that pipe center line style, since it's got that zero assignment, it's gonna call back to that layer. And now my template is a lot more streamlined. But I still don't have all of my municipal sanitary stuff created. I've only got the pipe and the structure, which means I need to create those other objects. I need to create my alignment, get those projected. And annotated. Now I'd have to go back and verify through my part list that all of these styles are defaulting correctly. But again, I'm using that name only style that I had set over by my sanitary network. And it's the exact same style, but it's showing up with those same things. So at this point, this is also why I'm advocating for you to create this test drawing, because I realized, all right, this wasn't just a problem with my styles. This is a problem with my part list. And my part list is going to define those styles out of the box. So I come over to my sanitary, I check my structures, and I notice that my storm sewer manhole, like, okay, that layer's set correctly. Now I gotta go back in and check my style. And that was saying, hey, it's set to layer 0 in plan view, but onto my profile view. So I gotta come back over here and just, it's a lot of iteration, it's a lot of tinkering, it's a lot of verifying, and we wanna keep this history outside of our template because that history is gonna go through with every drawing thereafter created from that template. And so this is the iteration process that we're gonna go through. And we're gonna do this inside of our main template, or sorry, inside of our test drawing. And now that we've got that for my purposes today, we'll call this set up and ready to go. It's time to import those things back into the main template. So how do we get the layers from one drawing to another? Yeah, that's right, Design Center. So I'm gonna open up my template. Just stick with my open drawings. Go to my layers, and this is kind of sort of fun to identify exactly where everything is supposed to be and what we're viewing. That's much easier. Anode pipe profile structure, anode pipe profile structure. Drag those into the main template. Search with star muni star, anode pipe profile structure, anode pipe profile structure. Fantastic. But I also don't want to have to look for this same layer. I don't have to come up here and type in muni every time. I want to be able to find all of my objects just by looking for like some sort of filter that's set up inside my layer already, or inside my template that's going to look for layers. Well, if you're not using them already, this is a great opportunity for me to point out that, hey, these things called layer filters exist. You may be hiding behind this double chevron in your template, but you can pretty quickly create a new one by going to New Property Filter. And you got to give this a name. So if I'm looking for my storm, I want to call this STRM, or, in this case, I can be a little bit more verbose. I don't have to quite follow the NCS stuff. But when you click in this name column, it's going to be giving you an opportunity. It's already got that asterisk, that first one in there. And so now if I type in STRM with another asterisk, it's going to find every layer inside my drawing, or inside my template, that has that tag inside of it. We'll say CMuni storm. And that's happy for me for now. So now, when I change my layer filter from storm, or from all to storm, I only get the things in here with the storm. Now, there's another problem that I'm running into, which is I've got to go through and I've got to delete these layers. I try and pick a random one. This is not being figured out because it's either being referenced, there's a rule talking to it, there's a style that's being associated with. I'll go back into my pipe network. Maybe I'll check my default style settings, and that style is going to say, hey, it's going on that other layer. Oh, it's this pipe walls. All right, what's inside that pipe walls layer? Okay, good, it's layer 0 setup, but I don't know. It's going to take me a really long time to go back through and find those old references that I'm trying to delete. I'm trying to do it manually. And I've already showed you how to create, how to bring in those layers through the Design Center. If you're going to be bringing in styles from one drawing to another, you can use, if you're doing that in bulk, you can go to the Manage tab, and then you can run the Import Styles command. I've got a tip here from Randy Reed saying that there's another way that you can get rid of these by just finding a dummy layer, like layer 0. I use, typically when I'm going through this, I'll use the layer Z junk, just to force it down to the bottom. But basically, you can take them all, you can merge them into some other layer, and then go back through and manually repath the rest of your stuff. So thanks for that tip, Randy. Also, the benefit of using layer 0 is that that puts your style assignment inside your layer to layer 0 as well. So it saves you a step there. To take styles from one drawing to another, if you're doing it in bulk, you can import it. Otherwise, open your destination drawing, go into your settings, set your tool space to master view, and then simply find your style of choice and drag and drop it in. If it's overwriting something that already exists, it's going to prompt you, So in this case, we do want to overwrite. My test drawing has the true definition of this storm structure style. However, I am going to take a minute here to do a little shameless self-promotion of the CTC Express tools to help get some of this stuff done. If you have the Sim project suite, you can use the tool Layer Trace to go through and find out what styles are associated with what layers. So in this case, I'm going to again use that prospect of layer filtering to find those legacy STRM layers, asterisks included. Sorry, no asterisks when using this tool. And I go and find that center, and I see that that's being referenced by the style walls pipe. Now, I know I want to keep this style, I just want to change what layer it's being associated with. And it's really easy for me, this is the interface that's going to make it really easy to see where that layer to style, where those dots, how those are being connected. I'm going to actually swap the layer of this to my C Muni Storm pipe, because I want my pipes to take on my pipe properties. Now that I've moved that style over from one layer to another, and that style is that layer is empty because I'm in my template, I can simply come down here and delete this layer, shampoo, rinse, and repeat for the rest of my layers that have styles associated with them. So this C Storm Prof, that's going to my C Muni Storm Prof layer. Once that's done, the tool's going to check with me. I can go through, I can manually verify in the rest of my drawing. So this is a really great tool for CAD managers to use for companies that are already customers of the Sim project suite. And this tool has been duplicated and upgraded in the Sim Manager suite from CTC Software, and that's called Template Tracker. Does everything that Layer Trace does in the project suite, except we also have the opportunity to run the same kind of C swap remove on our AutoCAD text, dimension, and multi-leader styles, the real benefit of those three is if you've got stuff like a drawing full of blocks and you want to figure out, hey, we're no longer using a shape-based font, we're using a true type font, anything that was using simplex or company name.shx, every single reference you can find for that, swap it out to Arial, point one, bold, italicized, whatever. So this makes that process really easy. The other thing that the Sim Manager Suite gives us the opportunity to do is it's not going to let us test how these new, how our styles are going to work on these layers, but we can use the export drawing layers, or we can use Layer Boss to set up both our object layer settings. What this is going to do is this is going to take what's in our drawing, it's going to kick it out into a spreadsheet that we can modify. I'll just hop over to my webinar folder. And from here, I have a spreadsheet interface that I can go through and I can work from. So if I want to, change all of these to suffixes, I can Control-C, Control-V in a way that I don't get to do inside the software. If I want to add in an additional dash before my asterisk, I can do that too here. And I can, just work with this as a spreadsheet, the way that spreadsheets are so beneficial to people doing the type of work that a CAD manager is trying to do. I can save this as, so that I have a record of what came out and what went back in. Run the import from Excel command of the set creator edit. I'll go back and I'll find that file. It's the in file. If I have it creating new layers for me, it'll go ahead and create those new layers. It'll tell me what's been updated. So before I had my dash pipe going as a prefix, now it's as a suffix, and I added that dash in front of the asterisk. So it's going to tell me what's different between the old and the new. It'll even tell me, hey, we're creating a brand new layer, or something's just wrong here. And now if I go into the drawing settings for this drawing, check out my object layers, I can now see that that suffix has been changed and that dash has been changed. So with the exception of Template Tracker and Line Type Manager, Layer Boss and Survey Template Manager, they're the exact same thing. They take your Civil 3D data, push it out to Excel, you manipulate it in Excel, and you bring it right back into Civil 3D. If you wanted to use Layer Boss to do the same thing for those layers, your dash anodes, your dash profiles, your dash structures, your pipes, again, you can take your existing list of layers in your drawing, and you can export some or none of them. You can take a whole host of different drawings that you want to put around. And then now over here, you've got that same table. You can copy this out of AutoCAD and start to mess with it, manipulate it, and change the way things are looking, but you can't bring it back in. So this is where I could say, all right, go find all my municipal layers for my storm and, change my plot color, change my plot style. Is it plotting yes or no, line type? Anything you can do in Layer Manager, you can now do inside an Excel file, and then you can import that back into Civil 3D on a sync basis or a simply additive basis. The Survey Template Manager does the same thing for your description keys and your figure prefix database. We didn't talk about those today, so I'm not going to give any more thought to that. Now, there is one key part of this workflow that I haven't shown yet, and that is using data references. So inside this drawing, my template, I've already got these networks pre-populated. Got my storm, I've got my sanitary, and those layers even exist too. So what happens if I create a data shortcut for these and I want to bring them in? Well, while I'm clicking around, I'll tell you what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to get a duplicate. You're basically get parentheses 1. And then all of this stuff is going to be for naught. So when you create a data reference, when you create that new file, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to delete those networks before you bring them in, before you bring in your data reference. So we've got our utility source drawing, associate, create. Sorry, folks. I got rushed and I didn't do it right. There we go. Associate. Create. So now I'll go back, I'll create a new drawing off of that template. Since it's already in that template, I've already got these networks in here. So now, if I bring in my sanitary, I'm going to try and name it the same thing. I'm going to use all the rest of that stuff. However, I'm going to get that parentheses 1 in my network name. And my layers are going to be created. I'm going to have C muni sanitary something dash pipe. But now my colors, my plot styles, all of that other line type and layer behavior that I set up inside my template isn't going to be brought along for the ride. So the solution to that problem is to delete the pre-populated network before creating your data shortcut. Now when I bring in my sanitary, it's been data shortcutted, the name is correct, and all of that behavior is going to be correct too. So this is not only important for data shortcutting into a design drawing. Don't forget that if you're going to be using a sheet drawing and using data shortcuts as well, that's something that you'll have to do. So that wraps up the workflow and the presentation for today. One of the other things I mentioned earlier in this webinar was that we would talk about my run-through of the drawing object layers menu and which one of these might be a good idea to go through and which one of these you might not want to take care of. Again, this is just an opinion, but I do feel pretty strongly about these ones here in the red. These are objects that you're going to be creating a lot of throughout your drawing, and the way that they're being associated back with their parent object and how many of these layers are going to get created would suggest that this is really going to blow your list up. So this includes your assemblies and sub-assemblies, catchments, individual corridor sections, individual material sections, and things with the sample lines, also your sheets. So basically all those are going to create a ton of layers, and I don't think you're going to want those in your drawing. Now, clearly I spent a lot of time today talking about the pipe network and how we want those settings to be set up. So if you're doing that, yeah, obviously we want these to use those drawing object naming identifiers as suffixes or prefixes. However, feature lines and grading also make really great candidates for this because you're only going to get a new layer for every site that you create. And again, if you have the right style settings for where those are going to display and be controlled by, you're going to make it really easy for you to be able to turn off or turn on all of the feature lines or grading objects inside of a particular site. Now, some things you might not want to have independent layers on, but I don't feel nearly as strongly as those ones in the red, are stuff like your alignments and your profiles, as well as your surfaces. So with a properly set up surface that has good layer assignment, maybe you do want them to all go on CTOPO. Plus, you should have a no display style set up, or at least a no plot style set up for most of these different objects inside your drawing. And you should really be controlling your surface view behavior by style as opposed to by layer control. So that's why I don't think you should, but if you wanted to, that's okay. And all the rest of these, we can see here that I've got, I'll try and scroll slowly for those of you watching later to be able to check back with this. But this last column is the parent object name that gets applied to that layer as I identified it in my research for this webinar. So some of them I couldn't quite figure it out, or like for these general notes, like there is no parent object, it's just the drawing, so it's not really applicable. But wanted to give you all an opportunity to check out some of that. So in conclusion, what did we learn today? Well, we were reminded that styles and layers are interwoven in a very complicated way. But when we use layer 0, assignment and styles, and when we're careful about it, we can really reduce the number of styles that we need in a template. We don't need a label for our storm and our sanitary and our water and our pipe 1 or pipe 2 or inside wall, outside wall. You know, we create a style, it goes back to layer 0, and then layer 0 says, oh, I know what pipework network I'm associated to. I'm associated to that one. I'll use those layer settings. And our pre-populated pipe networks can make the display control of our pipe network objects, and again, those styles, much simpler. If we're going to be using a data reference, we need to make sure that we delete them before creating that data, out of the drawing, the new drawing, before we create that data reference. And lastly, as a reminder of best practices, we want to do as little work as possible inside the template. Yes, it was okay for me to create those pipe networks, but it was not okay for me to do the actual testing of them inside there. I've got a lot of things to create. I've got a lot of things to delete. We always want to try to test that new drawing and import those updates back into the template because these drawing templates are going to be the basis for every other project, and every command, whether it's created, deleted, modified, or otherwise, that gets remembered. And the longer and longer our drawing history is, the greater our chances of some sort of corruption creeping in. So with that, I want to thank everybody again for attending. And we're going to go ahead and open up for questions if anyone has some. Also, my contact information is, my email is on the slide, so any questions that you didn't want to submit today or that pop up on later, feel free to reach out to me. Would love to hear from all of you.